Welcome to an in-depth exploration of one of the most important scenarios in poker, cutoff versus button in 3-bet pots. This comprehensive guide delves into the strategic intricacies and decision-making processes that define this dynamic. From pre-flop considerations to post-flop tactics, we unravel the subtle nuances that professional players leverage to gain an edge. Pre-flop, the cutoff opens approximately 30.11% of the time. In response, the button can either raise or call when continuing and choose the raise size. The button's decision must be made with caution, considering the potential risk of a squeeze or a 4-bet from the small blind or the big blind. The button adapts its strategy based on the size of the cutoff's open. Against smaller opens, the button tends to 3-bet more and call less. Conversely, with larger opens, the buttons play tightens, continuing less often and calling more, which results in a lower fraction of 3 bets. The size of the button's 3-bet also adjusts accordingly, larger against bigger opens and smaller for smaller opens. The 3-betting range includes strong hands like pocket tens to aces and ace-king, ace-queen, suited for value. It also incorporates semi-bluffs such as suited broadways, pocket pairs, and bluffs with hands like offsuit broadways, suited aces, and high-suited connectors like queen-9 suited and jack-9 suited. When the cutoff faces a 3-bet from the button, particularly in a situation where the cutoff opened with 2.25 big blinds and faces a 7.05 big blind 3-bet, it folds 56.66% of its range, continuing with 43.34%. The cutoff's response includes calling 22.68% of its range and 4-betting 20.66%. This high 4-bet fraction, approximately 48% of the continuation range, is a defensive strategy to counteract the button's 3-bet bluffs and deny equity. The purpose of 4-bet bluffs is to challenge the button's weaker hands, occasionally prompting folds from stronger ones. The cutoff's 4-betting range includes strong value hands like jacks to aces and ace-king, along with bluffs comprising weaker suited broadways, large offsuit broadways like ace-queen offsuit, and some pocket pairs. The size of the 4-bet ranges from 18 to 23 big blinds, with the option to split the range between larger and smaller sizes, using ace-king offsuit for larger bets and ace-king suited for smaller ones. Against the button's 3-bet, the cutoff's calling range mainly consists of suited broadways, pocket pairs, some suited connectors, and offsuit broadways at lower frequencies. It's noteworthy that the average expected value of calling is minus 1.76 big blinds compared to folding, which stands at minus 2.25. This implies that the calling range recovers approximately 0.49 big blinds on average. We will now look at post-flop tactics using a database analysis of a 163 flop subset of the 2.25 big blind open and 7.05 big blind 3-bet. We observe the average expected value for the cutoff at 5.48 big blinds in a pot size of 15.6 big blinds. The EV demonstrates a broad range, fluctuating from less than 3 big blinds to over 9 big blinds, indicating that different board textures significantly influence strategy for both players. The cutoff adopts a proactive approach on specific flops, donking an average of 6% of the time. However, this frequency varies depending on the flop. For instance, on low connected flops, like 7 of spades, 6 of spades, 5 of diamonds, the cutoff is more inclined to donk bet due to the higher likelihood of making sets and one-pair hands, while the button's preflop bluffs often miss these boards and will want to check and draw. When considering donk betting, the cutoff also focuses on ace-high flops accompanied by 2 lower cards such as ace of spades, 4 of diamonds, 3 of diamonds. Here, the cutoff typically has a polarized range, making these flops ideal for donking. The size of the donk bet usually hovers around 25% of the pot, though on certain boards, The cutoff employs varied bet sizes ranging from 10% to 75%. When the cutoff checks, the button must decide whether to continuation bet. The button tends to c-bet at high frequencies, approximately 80.4%, and checks back around 19.6% of the time. The preferred betting strategies on most flops involve small bets or a mix of 25% and 50% pot sizes. A 25% bet size is most common in these scenarios, averaging 41.72%, followed by a 50% pot bet frequency of 31.20%. Checkback frequencies are consistently below 60% and are highest on flops where the cutoff is likely to donk bet. On such flops, if the cutoff checks, the button often opts for a half pot bet. For example, on 7 of spades, 6 of diamonds, deuce of spades, the cutoff donks around 40% of the time and checks around 60%. The button bets around 44% frequency with strong hands, like over pairs and bluffs with overcards, particularly those with flush draw potential, given the prevalence of draws on such boards. The cutoff should consider check raising frequently to deny equity to the button's draws, necessitating a robust 3-bet range from the button on the flop for similar reasons. The button occasionally employs a larger c-bet size, such as 75% on low paired or disconnected boards, for example, 7 of spades, 3 of diamonds, deuce of clubs, where the cutoff checks their entire range. In these situations, the button, having missed with many pre-flop bluffs such as Jack-9 suited or King-Queen offsuit, opts for a large bet with a polarized range of strong overpairs and overcard bluffs, which have the potential to outdraw the cutoff's calling range of pocket pairs and ace-high hands. Additionally, the button uses tiny bets, around 10% of the pot, on boards with 3 high cards. This approach aims to deny equity from the cutoff's underpairs while remaining cautious about potential 2-pair hands. An example is a flop like ace of spades, queen of diamonds, 9 of spades, where the cutoff holds a polarized range. In this case, most underpairs will fold to the small bet since they are outmatched by the button's bluffs, which typically include underpairs as well. When confronted with a 25% flop bet, the cutoff's response is varied and highly dependent on the flop's texture. On average, the cutoff folds 40.42% of the time, significantly higher than the baseline folding frequency, or alpha, of 20%. This indicates a cautious approach in most scenarios. The cutoff calls 40.79% of the time and opts for a check raise 18.79%. The folding frequency shows substantial variation, ranging from 15% to 65% based on the specific flop texture. For example, on a flop like ace of spades, ace of diamonds, king of diamonds, the cutoff folds as much as 72% of the time, suggesting that its range has largely missed the flop, while the button's range is well aligned with it. Regarding check raising, the cutoff often uses bet sizes of 50% and 75% of the pot. Certain flops are more prone to check raises, particularly wet flops, or where the button bets at high frequencies. For instance, on a flop like ace of spades, 9 of diamonds, deuce of clubs, the button bets with 62% of its range, to which the cutoff responds by folding frequently, 51%, but also check raising quite often, 22%. In scenarios where the button opts for a larger flop bet, around 50% of the pot, the cutoff's response adjusts slightly. It folds a bit more and calls less, but the frequency of check raising remains similar to that against smaller bets. However, the size of the check raise tends to be smaller, often around 25%, which is close to a minimum raise. There are specific flops where the cutoff employs a larger check raise size. These boards typically feature a very polarized check raise range for the cutoff. An example is a flop like queen of spades, 10 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, here the cutoff's check-raise range is polar, including sets, two pairs, and strong top pairs for value, complemented by numerous bluffs and semi-bluffs. The button, in response, defends by calling with various draws and made hands, rarely raising, leveraging its positional advantage to contend against the cutoff's polarity. In conclusion, the cutoff versus button dynamic in 3-bet pots represents a microcosm of the broader strategic complexities inherent in poker. The decisions made at each stage, from preflop to postflop, are crucial and heavily influenced by various factors such as hand ranges, bet sizing, board texture, and player tendencies. This guide provides a framework for understanding and navigating these scenarios, emphasizing the importance of adaptive strategies and critical thinking.